Well. If it isn't another day in the land of air traffic chaos, where somehow, in one of the most tightly controlled airspaces in the world, a passenger jet and an army helicopter managed to defy the laws of probability and slam into each other midair. If you think that's impressive, just wait until you hear the official explanations. Because let's be honest, the spin machine is working overtime on this one. What happened? A masterclass in aviation oops moments. At around 9 p.m. on Wednesday night, a regional jet carrying 60 passengers and 4 crew members collided with a military helicopter engaged in a training exercise. Yes, you read that right, a training exercise. Because apparently, the best place to brush up on flying skills is near Ronald Reagan National Airport, a stone's throw from the White House and the U.S. Capitol. Nothing says safe skies like cramming a military drill into one of the busiest air corridors in the country. Within seconds of an air traffic controller trying to confirm if the helicopter had visual contact with the incoming jet, the 2 aircraft collided, plunging into the Potomac River. From that moment, it was a full-blown catastrophe. The jet, a Bombardier CRJ-701, and the UH-60 Blackhawk helicopter both met a watery grave, taking everyone on board with them. The blame game begins. You know the drill. A tragedy happens, and suddenly every government official with a microphone is throwing around theories like confetti at a parade. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, President Donald Trump, because of course he had to weigh in, and Army Secretary nominee Daniel Driscoll all pointed to one glaringly obvious fact. This never should have happened. But don't worry, that didn't stop Trump from making it political. He wasted no time linking the crash to diversity hiring at the FAA. Because why focus on air traffic management failures when you can push an unrelated narrative? When pressed for actual evidence, he gave the verbal equivalent of a shrug. It just could have been. Yes, the old, I'm just asking questions defense. Classic. A tragic loss, a predictable response. If all lives aboard are confirmed lost, this will be the deadliest U.S. air crash in nearly a quarter century. Among the victims were several talented teenage figure skaters and their coaches, fresh off competing in the U.S. Figure Skating Championships. That alone makes this loss even more gut-wrenching. Meanwhile, the military personnel on board were engaged in a routine training flight. Routine being the key word. One would think that a routine flight wouldn't end in disaster near an international airport. But here we are. A crisis in air safety? No kidding. If you've been paying attention to aviation news or have just been a passenger on a plane lately, you'll know that close calls in American airspace have been on the rise. From near misses on runways to Midair incidents like this one, it's becoming clear that something is very, very broken. The FAA and National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, have been screaming about safety concerns for months, and yet here we are. If a jet can't even safely land at one of the most regulated airports in the country, what hope do the rest of us have when we're crammed into a commercial flight, praying the pilot doesn't have to dodge a surprise helicopter? The investigation. More questions than answers. Federal investigators now have the unenviable job of picking apart this disaster. Here are just a few of the burning questions. Why was a military training exercise happening in such congested airspace? Why did the air traffic controller clear the plane for a short runway landing when a helicopter was already in the area? Why was there no immediate response from the helicopter when given instructions? How do we prevent this from happening again? Spoiler, probably more bureaucracy and finger-pointing. Reagan National Airport, the problem child of U.S. aviation. If you've ever flown into Reagan National, you know it's not exactly the smoothest experience. The airport's close proximity to federal buildings means there's already a complicated web of air traffic restrictions. Add in the fact that it's just plain overcrowded, and you've got a recipe for disaster. Flights were halted after the crash, but the FAA assured us that operations would resume by 11 a.m. Thursday. Because if there's one thing we can count on, it's our collective ability to move on from tragedy at lightning speed. So what's next? We can expect weeks, maybe months, of investigations, followed by a report that will likely conclude. Mistakes were made. There will be recommendations, possibly some policy changes, and then, inevitably, we'll all forget about it until the next near miss or tragic collision reminds us that we never really fixed the problem. Until then, buckle up. Because if recent events are anything to go by, air travel in the U.S. is just one miscommunication away from catastrophe.